What's going on, y'all? Welcome to episode 57 of the Half Price Concessions podcast. These podcasts, what they're really meant to do, other than just entertain, is I hope that when we're talking about racing stories, they stir something up in you. Maybe a story or a memory or something you hear on here will remind you of something from your racing past if you're a driver or if you're a fan or just a crew member, an official, whatever it is. I hope that you can hear something in it, something in each episode that will remind you of something of your own racing past or your own racing memory. This episode of the podcast is actually completely stirred up by the fact that we did an episode a couple of weeks ago on the Altamaha Kart track and some of the memories there with Brad Allen, who sat down with us. Scott Wicker heard that episode, reached out to me and said, "Hey man, I got some more stories for you about that place." And me and Scott actually used to work together at a speedway. He was an official when I was an announcer, and Scott's got a great history in racing. And we sat down to talk a little bit more about the Altamaha Kart track and even his own racing career, driving karts and whatnot, and a pretty cool family connection that me and him have connecting back to the Altamaha Kart track, because if not for my second cousin, Greg Williams, on my daddy's side, Scott Wicker wouldn't have even known Altamaha Kart track existed and what it ended up spurring in his own life and some of these memories that we'll share on this episode. So stay tuned. The Half Price Concessions podcast, round 2 of Altamaha Kart track stories with Scott Wicker, is coming up on the other side of these messages.
Planning on doing some digging in your yard? Your simple backyard project could quickly turn dangerous. Buried underground cables and lines are just inches below the surface, so don't forget to make one very important call to 811. Calling 811 is the first step in having your buried utilities marked so you know where it is safe to dig. 811 is free, it's fast, and it's the law. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
This episode of the Half Price Concessions podcast is brought to you with support from Performance Center Racing Warehouse. In addition to being the home of the PRW chassis, Performance Center offers in-house setups and consulting, plus suspension and chassis pull-down analysis, along with their fabrication shop that can reclip your race car with the fastest turnaround in the industry. Give Roger Johnson and the Performance Center team the chance to earn your racing business by calling them today at 704-838-1400 or visit them online at performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. Back on the Half Price Concessions podcast, and Scott Wicker. This thing, if anything any of my podcasts do, or our podcasts do, is I love when someone hears it and it kind of triggers them to bring up something that maybe has kind of gotten buried in the past as far as memories and whatnot. So first and foremost, you're the whole reason we even did the first episode, because I did not know Altamaha Kart track had even existed. I didn't know what you were talking about when you posted about it.
Right.
And that triggered me and Brad to do the first episode, but he even admitted there's a lot left on the table. So I'm glad you reached out and was willing to spend some yarns about this place.
Glad to talk to you about it. And had a lot of good times out there. It was fun. Met a lot of good people along the way. And that's where I first met Robert Turner, Brad Allen, Sherry. And I talked to Sherry a little bit this week. She actually works beside of me in Hillsboro. And I texted her a time or two. She actually drove some out at Red Rock back in the day, but we had a good time. And
I know you know a lot about how that thing even got started, and Richard Murphy had given me a little bit, but from your, take me in your knowledge about how the thing even got started out there in Altamaha.
Okay. Well, as Brad had mentioned, he had a little yard cart he rode around in. I showed you pictures of my little yard cart, rode around the yard in. 2 men, one named Doug Dodd, and the other one was Steve Bowes, B-O-W-E-S. They worked together, and they actually worked with my mom at the telephone company back years ago. And I really didn't know a lot of the history, and I seen Doug about 2 years ago. I hadn't seen him in years. And of course, we got talking about the go-kart track.
Of course.
And he had told me how I knew a little bit, but I didn't know what actually got it going. Steve actually bought a little go-kart just to mess around with in the backyard or yard at his house. And Doug got interested, and they got to, playing with that thing and riding it around. Well, where the go-kart track was built, or where it's still remnants of it today, Doug Dodd's dad actually owned that piece of property. So Doug said they got the idea of going up there and clearing up where the racetrack is, and they actually had to, that whole lot was covered with pine trees.
Yeah.
They had to cut the track out, the oval of the track, get the trees out of the way. They left trees in the infield, and basically they cut a go-kart track out for them just to play on. That's how it got started. It was just go up there on Saturday and Sunday, ride around on the dirt go-kart track. Well, I think, from the best I can remember from Doug talking to me, a lot of the people in the community got wind that there was a little go-kart track, and there was some guys up there riding around on Saturdays and Sundays. So other people start showing up with go-karts. And they started having little organized, unorganized races, so to speak. And so after a while, it got so popular that Doug and Steve and some of the people, and most of them were real close to the community, out in the hall, less than 2 or 3 miles from the track, got together and formed a little group, so to speak, called Carter's Limited.
Kind of like a club, sort of.
Like a club, yep, Carter's Limited. And it was like a stockholders type situation. Everybody put in like $100, if I remember Doug telling me correctly. And I don't know how many people they started off with, but they, put money in the pot, put lights up, built a flag stand, finished clearing the land, and that's basically what got it started, from riding around on Saturday and Sunday afternoon to everybody showing up with go-karts, then to, organizing a little club, so to speak, to organize races. And that's how it all got started. And I think this was somewhere 73-ish, 74-ish, something like it, when it all got going.
Real community thing. I think for me and probably most people, they think some guy with money comes in, builds a track, trying to get people to come in. This is like a total community thing. You put this in, I put this in.
Exactly.
With the money put together, we'll carve it out, we'll make it look nicer, and like you said, adding a flag stand and adding lights.
Yes,
that was different.
Yeah, flag stand, lights, grandstands. They had a few grandstands in. Civitan Club or something in that area used to come out on Saturdays and set up the concession stand, mobile concession stand, and had hot dogs and drinks and stuff like that. So it got to be a pretty big thing at the time, and like I said, just about the majority of people that ran there were within 2 miles of the racetrack.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it all got started.
It almost sounds like it was something for maybe people that had an interest in racing, they wanted to race, but they weren't quite to where they were ready to go buy a car and go over to the big track at Ace. This was something maybe a little more affordable they could do as far as getting a full-size car.
Yep. And back then there were few, and that is true. And it was big to us. I mean, it was just like if we were down the power line at the big track. That was our deal. And a lot of times some of the people from over the big racetrack used to come down there. We hear y'all over here, want to see what was going on. You know, they'll leave A Speedway and ride down Dodd Road and check out the go-kart races.
That's cool.
But a lot of fun.
So tell me about the first time you went, like how when you even ended up. About how old were you?
I was 15 years old, and I had taken an old, a yard cart, so to speak, that I got for Christmas in '77, and did a little modifying on it, moved the engine from the right side to the left side, and I'd kind of started. I had been out there one time before. A friend of ours told us about it. Me and my dad went out, and I saw it, and I was hooked. I mean, second time I ever showed up out there, I had a go-kart, and no lie, ready to go. And so it was April 1st, 1978, April Fool's Day. And
was that the first kind of kart racing you had ever gone to in person?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is first of everything.
First place I'd ever seen a go-kart race, first time I'd ever drove competitively on a go-kart was then. And got out there, and man, I was, the excitement was just overwhelming to me. Got out there and practiced, and they kind of did practice by classes just like they do at any other race. And I'm riding around out there, man, I was having a ball. I thought I was doing something, Everybody started pointing at me. And I'd go through the corner, everybody over there, the track workers pointing at me. I said, finally somebody yelled loud enough, "Flat tire." And I said, okay. I said, I better go check this out. Pulled in the pits, got the cart up on the stand. No, I didn't have one flat tire. I had 4 flat tires. And
how did you do that? Would you run over some tacks?
No, I sabotaged myself, I think. But back on my yard cart, I ran tubes in the tires or on the wheels. Well, I put the wheels together, and I bought some spacers to space the wheels out to make them wider so the tire would contact the track a little bit better. I didn't tighten them down good. All that stuff got loose and busted 4 tubes on 4 tires. Luckily, I had 4 tubes at the house. So my dad got in the car. I started breaking everything down. He went back to the house and got the tubes and got back with them, and I got everything back together in time to make the heat race. And so lesson learned.
Yeah.
Lap number 1. And but I'll never forget that. That was something.
Yeah. So from going out there and stuff, where we were talking before we turned the mics on, that was where you kind of met a lot of the people you still know in racing. And
oh yeah,
and kind of like going to school again, except we was going for racing
in a way. And I met Robert Turner, Brad Allen. They weren't racing when I started, but they eventually came along. Richard Murphy was there. Brendan Murphy was there. That's where I knew Brendan and Richard before they ever paved out A Speedway. And A Speedway at the time was dirt, and it was kind of hit and miss. They'd run for a year, and something happened, and then they might run 2 years later or something like that before Brenda really started working over there full time. But Brenda and Richard are good people, and Brenda's always been, she's a sweet lady, always been good to me.
I heard she was pretty tough behind the wheel, though.
Oh gosh,
I heard she could drive.
Brenda was tough. She was just about as tough as Richard Murphy was. Richard, it's hard to describe. Richard, everybody called Dale Earnhardt the Intimidator. Dale Earnhardt had nothing on Richard Murphy. Most intense driver of any form of motorsports I have ever run across in my life. I mean, when he was there, it was racing, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk to Joe next door or, go stand watch a race. No, it was get the go-kart ready, get ready to race, and he was tough. If you didn't outrun Richard Murphy, if you did, it was called Richard Murphy had a problem, and that's the only way you outrun Richard.
So you were probably up there watching him like a hawk, weren't you?
Yeah,
when
he was.
would race.
Oh, he was tough, and he had some. I ain't gonna call it rivalries, so to speak. Him and Mike Thompson. Mike was a real good friend of mine. Tragically, Mike got hurt real bad when Leon and Terry Wiles got killed down the eastern part of the United States. Mike was with them, but Mike and Richard Murphy put on some shows. Intense, very intense. And they were pretty good friends off the racetrack, but when they got on that dirt oval, it was over. The friendship gone this way, and they battled. I mean, it wasn't just I'm running first, he's running second. It was back and forth the whole 20 laps. Every Saturday night.
Did you ever work up the nerve to go talk to him, or did you just go talk to Brenda? How did that work?
I talked to Richard some. He was, he would, if you asked him a question, he'd talk to you.
Okay.
He didn't shut everybody out, but he was focused on the task at hand, and that was running the race and winning the race. So he, tough. I mean, tough. And, him and Mike put on some of the best races that ever happened out there.
Yeah.
And I know I've mentioned to you before the 21 lap race of 20.
Yeah.
And they had pulled away from the third place, whoever it was at the time. I mean, they were in a different zip code. They weren't any, the rest of them were up in the village out in the hall. They were still at the go-kart track. They were that far out in front. And I'll never forget, they took the white flag. I wished I could remember who won. Richard may know, but they took the white flag and came back around and took the checkered flag, lap 20. They did not stop. I don't think either one of them saw the checkered flag.
They just saw each other.
They saw each other. They were battling, and they weren't beating on one another. Hard racing. And they came out of the fourth turn on lap 21 of 20 and got together. Mike wound up in the tires on the front stretch right in front of the grandstand. And anyway, I've talked to David Murphy about it some. David asked Richard about it. Richard said, yeah, if we'd have run one more lap, I was coming in regardless, and that was pretty good. But start-finish line was actually down like at Talladega, closer to turn one than middle of the straightaway. So they had to pass the grandstands, pass the crossover to get on the racetrack before they actually got to the flag stand. And they didn't make it to the flag stand on lap 21. And very exciting.
Tell me about that first Kart of yours. You done showed me the pictures, and you were such a big Richard Petty fan. I don't think you could have fit another STP sticker on it. But
yeah.
How did you even find it?
With the go-kart?
Yeah, like just from the scratch. Where does this thing even come from?
I got that go-kart for Christmas when I was in the 8th grade. Rode around the yard some, and went down to my grandparents, rode around down there. They lived out in the country, but wasn't too long after I got it, me and my dad went out to the Albemarle kart track, and a friend of ours told us about it, and we went out there, and that was it. And I saw it. I said, this is it. I want to do this. So back home I went, and I started getting a ride around in the backyard kart ready and got it ready to race. And my granddad helped me brace it up some, put Nerf bars on it. It didn't have any Nerf bars on it. Didn't have a bumper or a back bumper on it. And we took and worked over the winter, got that all fixed up. We moved the engine from the left side to the right side. Got me some bigger tires, got rid of the knobby tires, and so got ready. And my first race out there was April 1st, 1978, and it was on from then on. And so we.
How'd you do that first night?
Well, as I mentioned, 4 flat tires in practice.
Well, it didn't start off good.
No, it didn't start off good. But I finished dead last in the heat race and dead last in the feature race. But I was addicted. That was it. I'm ready to go. This, didn't discourage me at all. The only way I could go then was up because I'd finished dead last. So anything other than that was an improvement, So that led to many dollars spent from 1978 to 1982. And
I always say it's worse than a drug addiction.
yeah. And speaking of worse than a drug addiction, you and Brad had talked about some people that actually had raced go-karts out there. Him and Robert, Richard Murphy, Brenda Murphy, Ziggy Zimmerman, Marshall Zimmerman, and Speedy Fawcett actually raced at the go-kart, at the Alcohol go-kart track when it. Speedy was
he Phillip back then?
Yeah, no. Speedy's always been Speedy. I think he got that name from the time he was born.
Okay.
But I remember watching Speedy his first race and out there, and it was kind of an ironic thing. We didn't have any kids back in racing. Nobody under 16 or 15 actually raced. So they decided they're going to start getting kids out to race, 10, 12 years old, something like that. And which was a good thing because, it was a bunch of, 18, 19, 20-year-olds and up racing at the time. And so they started a kids class. And I'll never forget his first race. Ziggy ran, Speedy ran, Tony Ross actually ran, him and his dad and his dad's brother raced out there. And I remember watching Speedy race, and I don't know what happened. I remember it to this day. Coming down the front stretch, something happened over in 1 and 2 with the kids out there. Well, Ziggy's pretty smart. He decided he was going to avoid the calamity over in 1 and 2. Right through the middle of the infield he went. back to the back stretch and back to turn 3 he went, and he ain't let up yet.
He just cut the corner.
He cut the corner, got out of trouble, stayed out of trouble. I don't know how he did, but pretty smart move. He kept from getting in an accident, that's for sure. But
wow,
a lot of memories.
I know Brad said, and from the pictures you showed me, just further drives home the point. Nowadays the carts have the bodies on them and they can lean on each other. And
oh yeah,
y'all couldn't do that because you had no protection. If you hit somebody from the back, you were literally going to run them over.
Yes, and we had nothing but bumpers and Nerf bars, and they weren't that big. Like Brad said, Nerf bars mainly protect the engine, not you. And back bumpers were, not that high, which they're not now. But we were out there one night, and I'll never forget, Mike Thompson was leading. I was running second behind Mike. Forgot what class we were running at the time. Anyway, we were going through 1 and 2, and I got down pretty low and got a good run on Mike coming off of 2. Well, so I decided, didn't clear him, so I was going to pull up back behind him and stay behind him. So when I came back up the track to get behind him, my front bumper went across his back bumper, lifted my front end up, And down in the tires off the back stretch I went. Didn't flip, didn't turn over. I just rode off the side of the track. And me and Mike always got along real well. We hadn't really become good friends at the time. And they came back around. I was over there getting my mess out of the tires, and Mike stopped. They shut the engines off, and he looked over at me and said, "What happened to you?" And I said it the wrong way. I said, "I hit you." And he thought I said, "I hit you," meaning I meant to hit you.
Yeah.
Oh, not good, not good. Mike, like I said, Mike and Richard were intense. Mike was not quite as intense as Richard was, but Mike was pretty serious too. And he thought I meant to hit him. And no, I never meant to hit him at all. He kind of looked at me like, "Oh, okay." And anyway, we became real good friends after that. But like I said, no protection whatsoever. And you had a helmet on, a leather coat, and gloves, and the rest of it was you. Yeah. And that was it.
How long did it take you to learn? Because I've heard from a bunch of them, you think all you need to do is just go out there and go fast, and then you kind of learn, well, we're going fast, but it's more about keeping my momentum. Yes. How long did it take you as a driver to kind of figure out, okay, this is what I need to do to win, or I can just keep running in the back doing this?
It was a combination of, you better have a go-kart to handle well, because go-karts, not like race cars. Back then, the only adjustments we had was air pressure in the tires. We couldn't change spindle height. We couldn't change rear axle height like you can now. I've looked at some of them, but it was handling and horsepower, and basically what it is today. But we didn't have much to work with as far as making those things handle. So it was air pressure and getting a good strong engine. But it took me about a year and a half, 2 years to get pretty comfortable with handling and stuff like that. And then after that, I ran pretty well and did all right. But like I said, I think the whole time I ran at Albemarle, I won one race. And it was kind of a funny deal. Me and Mike Thompson had gone Thursday night before we raced on that Saturday. We went to Jamestown to Comet Kart Sales. He bought a new go-kart. Coming home, I stopped on Highway 70. It was a place called H&S Cam Company. And I bought a go-kart. Same night. We got Mike's. We come back through, picked mine up. And Saturday night, me and him were, in new go-karts. And
how much did it cost you?
Back then, you could go racing for probably $1,300. The go-kart was $1,000, cut and dry. You would have to buy a good set of tires because they did not come with good tires. And, engine, a few gears here and there, and you were pretty much set to go. But me and Mike, like I said, had new karts, took off. We were, pretty sure we were running Sportsman at the time. And we were running 1 and 2 and started lapping the field, believe it or not. And we come up on a cart, and Mike and the other guy got tangled up together. And they kind of went a little bit high and forward, and I got under both of them, went around them, wound up winning. And like I told you, you didn't beat Mike or Richard unless they had trouble. Mike had trouble.
Okay.
So that's the only way I would have got around him, because I was close, and if he would have slipped up, then I'd have been able to do something with him. But he had trouble. So.
Sure.
And but that's the only way you beat them too.
Doing all this, it seems like you said, you got hooked instantly. Just you're getting better at it. You're doing a lot of the stuff yourself, like you said. Did this lead to aspirations of doing the bigger stuff, going over to Ace and the big track? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you the story about that. Donald Bradshaw and Buddy Summers had a dirt car. This is when A Speedway was dirt. They had a dirt car. And Robert, Buddy, Donald, Robert Turner, Buddy and Donald had a shop down in Mebane. Well, I used to go down there and hang around. And Donald and Buddy had a nice dirt car, real nice dirt car. And they decided they wanted to sell it. I asked them, I said, how much you want for it? They told me. So I got a guy that said he was going to help me. I was on the way to the bank to borrow the money. Believe it or not, I was going to borrow money to go racing. That's how, like I said, it's an addiction. So you do whatever you got to do it, So I was on the way to the bank and to get the money. And the guy that actually was going to help me, I actually worked with him. And I was just before leaving to go to the bank, really. But anyway, he said, look, I can't help you. And this is how serious I was, or how crazy I was, I guess, at the time. I was going to go buy a race car, did not have a truck to pull it, did not have a trailer to pull the race car on. I did not care. I would find a way to get there. The main deal was to get the race car.
Yeah, we'll figure out the rest later.
I'll figure the rest out later. Let's go get what I got to have first, And but it never materialized. And Mike Herron, over the years I worked at Ace, was kind enough to let me take his car out and run it some. And I don't know. I felt pretty comfortable with it, but the fire didn't come back bad enough. I wanted to go get one and do it, but had a lot of fun doing it. And,
how long did you run karts?
I ran from '78 to 1982, my own equipment, and the last year I ran, I had actually cut back. I didn't run every week or go to a track around here every week. I ran the WK Dirt Series, North Carolina Dirt Series, first year they ever did it. And went and bought a brand new Kart and was running limited modified. Got my the engine I had from Alan Weddle. And I know Brad mentioned Alan when y'all would talk before, and got that thing ready and went. The first race of the year was at Liberty. Went down there, ran fairly good, and finished third or fourth. And so we had a race a month, basically what it boiled down to. So, we ran Liberty, say, in April. Next race wasn't until May. So it gave me a month to get ready, and or get stuff ready to go back. And did pretty well. Finished second that year in points. I actually won the last race I ran at Roseville, North Carolina, down the other side of Raleigh, and track I had never seen before. And I always did pretty good at places I'd never seen, never been to. And here's the reason why. I knew I could do this setup, this combination, and run good at Ace Speedway or Albemarle go-kart track. I never would change anything. Didn't try this, didn't try that. I knew if I did this, I was at least going to run second behind Mike.
That baseline was good enough
That
to carry you.
baseline was good enough to carry me, and I was fine with it. When I went somewhere else, I didn't know what to do, what worked and what didn't work. So I had to change things. Run this gear, do a little bit different deal with the air pressure on the tires, and I always did good when I went to other places. First race I ever won, there was a track on the other side of Randoman in Sophia, North Carolina, called Cedar Square. Okay, Cedar Square.
Never heard of this one.
Oh yeah, 1/4 mile banked all the way around. You talking about Bristol?
Like a real bowl.
It was a bowl. Bristol Motor Speedway had nothing on Cedar Square. I mean, high speed on a go-kart, probably running 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour in the draft.
Oh.
You go down the back stretch and you pull down, you better have a run on the man in front of you, because if you don't, as soon as you pull down under, you're going to the back of the line.
Wow.
That's how critical it was. And I had seen the go-kart track one time, never saw a race there. And Mike and Richard and several of them were going to Liberty or something one night, and he called me. You know, this is back before cell phones, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you talk to somebody, you better be in the house. So otherwise, you wasn't going to talk to them. You know, Mom had to take a message for you or something. And Mike called me and said, we're going to Liberty. You want to go? I said, no. I said, thinking about going to Cedar Square. He said, okay. And I said, y'all do good. I'll call you tomorrow. I got down there. I put the highest gear you could get on the go-kart, which is a 16-tooth clutch, 53-tooth axle gear. Highest speed gear you could have at the time. Went down there, and I never changed nothing but put fuel in it. And they throwed the green flag, and Joe Story and Chuck, I can't remember Chuck's last name, and myself started on the front, took the green flag, and Chuck led the first lap, but I was under him coming out of Ford for the first lap. I got in front of him, so I was just concentrating on where I was going. I was in the lead. Well, before the race was over with, I was too scared to look back. But the thing is, I didn't hear anything behind me. And I looked across, I was a half a lap ahead of them, 10 laps. And so I won the heat race. So feature time come, I didn't change a thing, put fuel in the go-kart, took off. And when it ended up, they were going in 3. I was coming out of 2. I was that far ahead of them. And I'll never forget it. Took checker flag, got to make a lap, with the checker flag in my hand, and came around to hand the flag back to the flagman, and the go-kart cut off.
Oh, it just died.
It died.
Oh.
So that meant I had to push it over to the scales in the tech building. And like I said, this track is banked. So here I am huffing and puffing, getting this go-kart up the hill. Got up there, and I had built engines for Joe Story. Joe actually drove for David Benton out of Greensboro. Joe looked at me, and this was the funny part. I had gone to Whitses or Springwood Friday night. This was Saturday night, and ran dead last. Got my butt kicked by everybody. I came home, went back through the engine, put it back together, went to Cedar Square and basically wore them out. I come up the hill pushing this go-kart that wasn't running up the hill to the scales. Joe was standing there with money in his hand.
Yep. Protest.
He said, Scott, he said, you running too good. He said, you run like junk Friday night. He said, we're going to have to take a look. I said, that's fine. I said, there ain't nothing here to hide. You want to look, that ain't no problem. So David Benton, like I said, I built engines for David Benton the year before. David went up to Joe and told Joe, he said, look, man, he said, he built engines for us, and we ran down here and ran up front for a year, He said, you wasting your money. So I got my tools. On the way back to the tech shed to take the engine apart, and Joe said, I withdrew the protest. I said, okay. Still got home at 2 o'clock in the morning, but,
At least you didn't have to bring it home in a box.
Well, that's true. And a lot of memories, a lot of good memories.
That sounds like the kind of track, because it's so banked and probably because of the speed you were carrying, did you feel any after effects, like your shoulders or your gut? Did you? No?
Not really. I mean, it was the straightaways were long enough. You had a little time to
kind of
catch your breath, and and the track was banked so much. The go-kart, in some instances, kind of guided itself through, in some ways. So it really wasn't physically demanding. A lot of mentally demanding. I've seen a bunch of bad wrecks. I saw a bunch of bad wrecks down there.
Yeah.
And they had a board, the backstretch, a board wall on the backstretch. I seen a guy get airborne one night, hit that board wall, flattened the board wall came back up, and he disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And he was on the other side of the wall, down in the weeds and bushes and stuff. And that place was something.
Was it near Caraway? That's the only thing I can think of down
It's
there.
pretty close to Caraway. When I used to go through Pleasant Garden, go up to Level Cross and cut through somewhere up there and get over to the racetrack. But it was out in the middle of nothing. I mean,
kind of like Caraway is. Just out there in farms,
yeah,
racetrack.
Racetrack, that's right. Matter of fact, Cedar Square was built in the middle of a dairy farm.
I figured.
Yeah, so it was, you had to go by the house, the barn, the shed where the tractor was at before you ever got to the go-kart track. And it was a different world down there. And but it's funny, and it's still like this today in most forms of racing, Ace Speedway, Orange County Speedway. Our little group ran Altamahal. Another little group ran up to at Whitsett and Springwood, so to speak, and a totally different group ran Liberty and Cedar Square. I mean, very rarely did one set go from one track to another, so to speak, and I guess, a lot of us, we've run Whitsett and Springwood on Friday night and then go to Altamahal on Saturday. And but, each track had their own little deal, so to speak. So it was about like it is today, so some aspects. But
what made you get out of it?
Well,
If you don't mind me asking.
No, met my current wife, and I always said, meet somebody, racing's gone. And I actually met her. I was working at a place, transmission shop in Burlington, and the guy I was working for, Craig Deaton, Craig actually went and helped me my last year. I ran my own equipment, and I did pretty well.
I know Craig Deaton.
Craig, good chassis man. Real good chassis man.
He used to have the transmission place on the web?
Yeah, United Transmissions.
I remember Craig.
Yeah. And Craig got me dialed in. I was decent, but once I got him I was working for him, got him talked into going with me because he knew a lot about setting up a race car and stuff. And when he started going with me, I started running a whole lot better because, I was the engine builder, chassis man, the whole 9 yards. There was a lot of races I went by myself. You had to beg your neighbor to come over and help you unload and all that stuff. That got old, but I just met my wife at the time, decided it was time to settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
Drove a time or two after that, but somebody else's stuff. But that's when I finally hung it up, October of '82.
Yeah.
And had a lot of fun.
I was about to say, I remember, I was glad you were still at Ace at the time when I started working there. We'd probably never known each other.
Yeah, never would. Never knew that when my racing had connections with your family. So
Yeah, I guess Greg would technically be my second cousin.
Yeah.
He's my dad's first cousin.
right, yeah, he actually a couple times ago I mentioned you. We had talked, and he was speaking about your grandfather, and he said, Spencer's got a grandson named Tyler. I said,
I know that guy.
It hit me, I never knew. I said, you're kidding. He said, yeah. I said, yeah, I know Tyler Williams. He said, yeah, and Greg said, I understand he's a great announcer at several racetracks. I said, yep, you got the right one. So,
I don't know about the great part, but that's wild though. Shoot.
yeah,
I didn't know there was any, family with that, because all I ever heard was Grandpa Stories sponsoring Bill Hall at Ace, and at a time running with Red Justice and Donald Tucker and Frank Massey, and I've heard those stories from other people, but I would have never heard the Greg Williams story and my Uncle Don.
yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, they were.
Small world.
It is a small world. Now, like I say, if it hadn't been for Greg and his dad, I probably wouldn't have made it to the racetrack the first time.
Yeah.
And so they would go to the go-kart shops on Saturday in the off season, call me, hey, you want to go up to H&S? Yeah, they'd come by and pick me up, and we'd ride up, and, I'd pick up a few little things here and there, and they were getting stuff ready to go too. So,
did you just do the dirt, or did you do some asphalt racing too?
Yeah, I did some asphalt, and Brad mentioned the track up at the Goodyear plant in Danville. Well, that track started basically the same way Albemarle did. A bunch of guys that worked at the Goodyear tire plant got together and started racing in the parking lot. True story.
You gotta love it.
Yeah, true story. They'd set up cones. They'd run an oval one week. They might make a little road course the next week. On weekends, they go out there and race their go-karts. Well, the track decided, if y'all gonna keep doing this, we're gonna build a track, a full-fledged track. And Buddy Road, let me tell you what, it was a racetrack and a half. Nice racetrack. Had an oval. You could run right, or turn left. It was shaped kind of like Indy, 4 distinct corners. Then it had road courses cut in the middle of it. So you could go up there and one week, you might run the oval. You might run part of the road course on that end, part of the road course on this end. But it was, like I said, it was built for employees. Well, everybody got to wanting to come up there and race, hey, can my buddy come up next week, one of the guys that worked there. Yeah, so finally, once every 2 or 3 months, they let the outside folks come in.
Yeah.
And they couldn't race. It was just the people that didn't work there at the plant, and they put on organized races for us and go up there and run. Nice racetrack. Very, very nice. And had a lot of fun doing that. Me and Mike went up there. Mike Thompson went up there one Sunday and ran the outsider race, so to speak, and had a good time.
Wow.
Had a good time.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Did you leave anything off the table?
No, I think we covered about it.
Did you ever get cussed out or in a fight? Anything crazy before I turn the microphone off?
I never got, and the closest I guess I came is when I ran across Mike that night and told him I hit him.
Yeah.
As far as
you didn't have no backup with you. You better not piss too many people off.
I didn't have no backup. Now I will say this: there was a little track up in Reedsville, North Carolina. Me and Mike went up there, and for the most part, everybody got along pretty well. Well, there was one guy at Reedsville. Him and Mike ran against one another, and after the race was over, it all broke loose, fighting and stuff like that. And the guy and Mike a guy got mad at Mike, and they were mouthing off. Well, I don't think the other guy and Mike ever got in a fight. It was everybody wanting to, join in on the whatever, and they got to fighting. Well, I knew something was going to happen, so I reached in the toolbox. I had a hammer in my back pocket, but if anybody got a hold of me, I was either going to hit them or run. I probably ran, but no, never had any altercations with anybody at all.
I'm glad to hear that.
The whole time I raced, and I've seen some, but never got in them.
Yeah, you were a tech man. I know you saw some jack
God.
handles ready to pull out.
It's I could talk 2 hours about Ace Speedway too. So
Yeah.
wow.
Well,
Yeah. Very well. You know, racing's an intense sport, and you know, like we were talking about, it's an addiction.
yeah.
I'll never forget. I actually worked with Speedy Fawcett for 3 years. We worked at the same dealership, Ford dealership in Hillsboro. That's all he studied was racing, and if it gets in you to that degree, then, and he made mention, we were talking one day about racing and what all, and I heard him say, and I didn't realize how true this was. Speedy Fawcett said, racing is like being addicted to crack cocaine. He said, you ever get on it, it's hard to get off of it.
Yep.
And, you know, if you're either doing it, watching it, working at it or something, but you never get it out of your system. I mean, it is an addiction, but, you know, I've said it many times, the best thing or the biggest thing to me is meeting the people that I've met, you know, people I'd never known unless I'd been around it or in it. And like I said, met Robert and Brad, and this is a story.
All right.
Me and Robert actually worked together for a little bit, and this was before we actually worked together at County Ford in Graham. And October of '81, I'll never forget it. He calls me, and I had gotten hurt at work and wasn't able to work, but yeah, I was still driving a go-kart. And he called me one Friday night, I'll never forget it, one Friday afternoon about 3 or 4 o'clock. He said, hey, this is Robert. He said, hey, what are you doing? I said, just hanging around. He said, you want to go to Morehead City? I said, what are we going to do? He said, my brother lives down there. There's a go-kart track down there. He said, I'm leaving tonight. You want to go? I said, yep.
Well, that's like a 3.5 hour haul. Probably more.
It was longer than that. Back then, there was no such thing as Highway 40.
Oh, okay.
There was no Highway 40. If you went from anywhere east of Raleigh to get somewhere, you went through the middle of downtown Raleigh on Highway 70. Oh. There was no way around it. So he calls me up 4 o'clock. You want to go to Morehead City? I said, yeah. He said, go-kart track down there. I said, cool. I said, we'll go. I said, where we staying? He said, my brother lives down there. I said, yeah, let's go. I had a trailer, loaded my stuff up, got it ready. He come we had to go to GE in Mebane, borrow a truck from his sister, come back, hook the trailer up, go load his stuff up, and we probably got down there at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, to his brother's. And got down there, got up Saturday morning, got, you know, ready to go to the racetrack, and got to the racetrack, started. Robert got the run, and then it started raining.
Oh.
So we rode for about 5 hours, you know, didn't get to do the show, so, but
that's an addiction right there.
That's an addiction.
5 hours and no payoff.
5 hours and no payoff. And me and Brad and Robert and Sherry and several of us loaded up, and we actually went and ran the outsider race up at the Goodyear plant one Sunday. That was interesting. And Brad got into a little bit of an accident off the backstretch. It's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. And he wound up going off the racetrack. There wasn't a wall or any hay bales or nothing like that. He goes off the backstretch and down and runs into a chain link fence. And really the wreck wasn't violent, sudden stop type thing. So I, ran over there, and Sherry ran over there, and here come the EMT guy. He was over there. So I was far from here to the door there from where Brad was at. Sherry come up, and I'll never forget this. And the EMT guy looked at Sherry and said, "Ma'am, get back." I said, this me. I said, that just happens to be his sister. I thought Sherry was going to pick him up and chunk him over the chain link fence, and she wasn't going nowhere.
No.
And Brad, he went to the hospital in Danville, but he was okay. Just shook up and sore a little bit or whatever. But we got to travel together some and race.
I just can't envision making Sherry Allen mad.
No, she did. She kind of got a little bit upset. She remembers it this day. I asked her about a year ago. I said, "Do you remember when we were at Danville?" She said, "Yep."
Like it was yesterday, probably.
Yesterday. She hadn't forgot.
Oh, shoot. Well,
A lot of fun.
about to say. Well, brother, I appreciate you sharing the stories. I'm taking another picture of you on that STP card. It'd have been something if you'd had the Richard Petty hat to go with it. That would have, boy.
That was good old days. You're talking about all them STP stickers. Petty used to have an open house down at Level Cross at the shop once a year, once every 2 years. And man, you go through the shop and all like that. When you got out of the shop, there was a big table out front, and it was piled high with STP stickers. That high.
I bet you swiped a bunch.
I got a whole stack. I probably got some stickers somewhere, and I started plastering STP stickers on everything I could get my hands on.
That was your man, though.
Yeah, and that's the good old days.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming by.
The Half Price Concessions podcast is brought to you in part by our friends at Accelerated Graphics. Whether you need a wrap for your race car, signs for your business, banners for your special occasion, decals, apparel, or anything else, you need to call Jason Turner at Accelerated Graphics. Call him at 336-266-5653. Visit him online at www.worth2tenths.com. You can also find him on Facebook by searching for Accelerated Graphics. Anything you need to give your racing career, your personal business, or anything you need a nice, clean, professional, exciting look, call Accelerated Graphics today. Is your racing program in need of more speed? No need to look any further than calling Keith Montgomery at Montgomery Performance Consulting. Keith and his years of experience and knowledge will help enhance your racing program and make sure each and every customer is satisfied with the service you receive. Everything from chassis pull-down services to consulting at track, Keith Montgomery is the guy you need to call. Find Montgomery Performance Consulting today on Facebook or call Keith directly at 336-382-1835 and get the most out of your racing program by using Keith and his wealth of experience and knowledge. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Half Price Concessions Podcast. Be sure to find us on Facebook by searching for the Half Priced Concessions Podcast. Give us a like, leave us some comments if you will, share some of our postings and whatnot. If you see something you like, that would really help us get the word out a ton. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the Half Price Concessions Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, whatever app you're using to listen to our show, YouTube as well. Whichever way you're listening, make sure you hit the subscribe button. That way, not only will you automatically see when we put out new material, but it also helps us out a whole lot more than you could ever know. Special thanks to our partners at North Carolina 811 DIG, the Performance Center Racing Warehouse. We've got some new partners coming in as well, so stay tuned. A lot more good stuff to come, but we really appreciate you listening to the Half Price Concessions Podcast. My name is Tyler Williams, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.